Good morning, and welcome to Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We welcome those of you that are present here within the walls of our sanctuary, and we welcome those of you who are physically present in the church but prefer to sit outside on our patio and watch the proceedings from a video screen and brave our winter temperatures to be here present and thus feel that they are reducing their potential for exposure to COVID. And we welcome those of you who are joining us on Zoom from the comfort and feelings of safety in your own homes. We welcome you all. My name is Jean-Bor Zoltan, and I'm a pastoral associate. Today, our minister, the Reverend Matthew Funkreri, has a sabbatical day off. Today's service is led by my fellow pastoral associate, Hannukah Bauer. As many of you know, she's a graduate of Yale Divinity School, was an ordained minister and a political science professor. Today, she calls on her Jewish heritage to bring us a message about Hannukah. I would like to acknowledge our musical director and choir conductor, Chris Tackett, and also our audiovisual team, Lee and Todd McNeely and Alex Stuckey, And our camera operator today is Chuck Tatum, and our Zoom host is Robin Bussell. Thank you all for your efforts to make our Sunday services run well. I invite the congregation here to turn around and wave to our fellow congregants on Zoom so that we can all feel our togetherness. Our overall theme this month is favorite things. Last week, we looked at the ways we celebrated the varied holidays that we will be experiencing as the month of December progresses. Today, we look at the Jewish tradition of Hannukah and how that festival has qualities that we Unitarian Universalists can identify with and experience a strong sense of affiliation. This holiday is about light. Today is the first day of the Jewish festival of light, Hannukah, which is celebrated by lighting a special candelabrum, the menorah. The menorah symbolizes a miracle that occurred in Jewish history. There was an uprising of the Jewish people in ancient Israel against their oppressors and occupiers. For a brief time, the victorious Jewish people were free again. They could pray again in their sacred temple in Jerusalem. However, there was widespread deprivation. Jewish tradition calls for a dedication of their temple that required lighting a sacred lamp and keeping it lit for 8 days and nights. However, there was only enough lamp oil for 1 day. But miraculously, the lamp stayed lit for the full 8 days. Monica will have much more to say about this. The Unitarian Universalist symbol and logo, the double-circled chalice and flame, has its roots in Europe during World War II. An artist and anti-Nazi activist, an Austrian refugee named Hans Deutsch, met the Reverend Charles Joy, who was then executive director of the Unitarian Service Committee, an organization dedicated to helping Eastern Europeans, among them Unitarians and Jews, to escape Nazi persecution. Hans designed the symbol to act as a guide for people seeking refuge at safe houses. The chalice and the flame as symbol was soon adopted by more and more American congregations. Today is the first day of Hannukah. Let us light our chalice with the samesh of the menorah, and let it shine our combined flames to dedicate ourselves to the universal temple of peace and justice for all. A reading of the poem, The Feasts of Light, by Emma Lazarus. Kindle the taper like the steadfast star, ablaze on an evening's forehead o'er the earth, and add each night a luster till afar, an eightfold splendor shine above thy hearth. Clash, Israel, the cymbals, torch, and lyre. Blow the brass trumpet and harsh-tongued horn. Chant psalms of victory till the heart take fire. The Maccabean spirit leap newborn.
Good morning. And now for our sacred song, we have a video from YouTube on a song you may know and love called Give Light, and people will find a way.
Give light, and people will find
And now is a time for us to have a reading, and I have written a poem for this occasion. I've written a Hanukkah poem, but I need to preface that by letting you all know I am not an official Jew. So we're not doing a lot of the official things that we might do for Hanukkah, the prayers when the candles are lit and that sort of thing. And this is going to be an unusual Hanukkah service. We're not going to talk much about the dreidels. So some of you know I'm a brand new Jew by heritage. I discovered this in a DNA test in 2016 when I discovered that I was 80% Ashkenazi, which is quite something considering I was raised Catholic by anti-Semites. I know. So when I come to Jewish practice, I am more Jew curious than actually Jewish. But I wish to celebrate this heritage that many around the world share, and also the universal ideals in Jewish practice that we can all learn from today. So in that spirit of Jew curious, here is my poem for the 8 nights. When I need to look for light, I find it hiding behind children or singing. When I need to look for light, it finds me when someone laughs so hard. When I need to look for light, sometimes it's too bright for me to see. Sometimes when it looks for me, I step sideways, shadow-bound, determined for dark days. When it looks for me, I am consumed with necessity and busy myself, as if illumination were a luxury. But once a year, the ancestors force my hand, and no light becomes more light, more light, more light, each night brighter than the last, taking me away from my little life into the turning of the earth and the once again tilting of the earth sunward. Thank you, Chris. Now, as a kind of bizarre meditation on Hanukkah, I will show you the menorah that I went out and bought from CVS when I discovered my Jewish heritage. It's not the beautiful one over there. That belongs to Chris Tackett. It's this little plastic guy. This little plastic guy went with me all the way to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where I performed a one-person show called Brand New Jew. And the conceit of the show was that I would begin like this, and then with each new section of the show, there would be another light, and another light, and another light, until I was finished, and at that point, everyone could go home. So for today, I thought I would try something different. So we start here, and I'm going to ask you to think about a joy that you might be willing to share, and I will light an LED light for your joy. And you don't have to come up here, just raise your hand, I'll call on you, you tell me the joy, I'll repeat it on the microphone and give you your light. How's that? So we're going to begin with my first little light, the shamash. We have a kitten. Yay, I know. So that's all I have to say. You don't have to say a whole lot about your joy, but ours is we have a kitten. Yes. Wonderful. We're going to light another one of these for our wonderful music that Chris brings us. Yes. The joy is finding MVUU, and we're very happy you did, and we'll light a candle for that. Yes. Oh, you have your son staying for the weekend. Mazel tov. There we go. And we have a few more. Yes? Oh, meeting your husband. Very nice. You're going to have a good holiday. Charlie, you're going to buy something really nice for her now. Yes, Lee. Terrific. Let's have a Zoom person.
My mama is here with me.
Oh, yay. That's a joy. Who else on Zoom? Skip and Mary, unmute yourself.
Here we are. Our joy is every time we see a smile on one of our two sons' faces, or both sons at the same time.
Oh, lovely. Very good. We have one more to go. Yes. Oh, yes. You're going to light your Hanukkah candles tonight with your children on Zoom. That's fabulous. So now we have light, light, and more light. Thank you, Chris. So The Hanukkah message is a different one for children, I think, than for adults. And Neil and I are donating this book to the library here at MVUU so that our kiddos here can learn about Hanukkah in an appropriate way in a children's book, and it's a lovely book. So we're going to leave that with you today, and happy Hanukkah to all the children. But I have a different message for us. So we're going to begin with the poem that Zambor read earlier today by Emma Lazarus, the one that ends with, "Chant psalms of victory till the heart takes fire, the Maccabean spirit leap new-born." She's writing about Hanukkah. Emma Lazarus began her writing life interested in classic poetry, but ended it as an activist for the Jewish people. She is most well known for her poem on the base of the Statue of Liberty, The New Colossus. But in her lifetime, she was best known as an activist for the rights of immigrants, particularly Jews. When she read newspaper accounts about the terrible, violent pogroms in Russia, she turned her attention for the first time in her life to her own Jewish identity. She became a driving force in the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society and wrote for the Jewish press in America. Notice when Emma Lazarus writes about Hanukkah, she is not interested in any miraculous oil lasting for 8 days. Not there. She doesn't care about dreidels or chocolate coins. She's interested in the Maccabean spirit. She's interested in freedom, the cost of it, and what we are willing to pay for it. Today's modern Hanukkah morphed into a lighthearted, happy story that only focused on the end of a long war of liberation. A minor holiday not even mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, today it's become a festival of lights for children with singing and spinning dreidels and chocolate coins and a gift on each of the 8 nights for every good little Jewish child. This festive version of Hanukkah, well, it developed in response to Christmas celebrations. This way, Jewish kids would have a winter holiday near the solstice, too, and gifts. But the darker, more historically accurate version of this story, the one Emma Lazarus refers to, is about domination and rebellion and reclaiming what we feared would be forever taken from us. It's a story about bullies and not letting them win. In this way, it's a Jewish story, but it's also a universal story. And this year in particular, it can be our story. My favorite quote from the Christian scriptures is most appropriate for this. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. Scholars, when they write about Hanukkah, they agree that the original celebration was a military victory, plain and simple. It had no religious significance at the time. It was a military victory. The rabbis, they needed to give it a religious significance. And so that's where we get the story about the little bit of oil magically lasting for 8 nights. But if we separate the miracle story from the history, here's what we get. About 200 years before the Common Era, the Syrian dictator who had taken over Israel wasn't willing to stop at a mere military victory. Oh no. He wanted total domination. Nothing less would do. Think of the photos of Hitler in Paris. He brought in architects with plans to redesign the City of Lights into monuments to Nazi ideals, celebrating the Aryan race. If he had been successful, he would have redesigned all of the great monuments of Europe into advertisements for racism, temples to himself. That's what total domination looks like. And the Syrians were in the same line of work. So to prove his total domination, the Syrian dictator took the holiest place in Israel, the temple in Jerusalem, and he moved his own people right in there. And they removed all the signs of Jewish religious practice, and they put up statues to their gods. And as if to prove a point, the Syrians looked for the most humiliating thing they could do in that temple. And that's what they did. They performed ritual sacrifice to their gods with pigs. And this set off a war led by Judas Maccabeus. The Maccabean revolt seemed like the longest of long shots. It was a small band of Jews fighting against a well-funded and well-trained army, but people fighting for freedom are hard to stop, aren't they? The dictator Putin is finding that out right now in the Ukraine, which is led by a Jewish president. Americans found this out in Vietnam, where it turned out that peasants didn't see themselves as communists. They saw themselves as freedom fighters, and freedom fighters are very hard to stop. When the Maccabees finally won, they reclaimed their holiest of places, and they had to clean the place up, right? They had to clean it up from top to bottom. The first order of business, of course, is to turn on the lights, and that's when in the legend they found the small bit of oil. It lit up the place for 8 nights until they finished all the rituals needed to return the temple back into their holy place. And that's how we get latkes. Crispy, delicious fried potato pancakes. What's a Jewish holiday without food? So the story about the miraculous oil then turned Hannukah into a festival of fattening fried food, like potato pancakes and fried jelly donuts. Let's eat, right? Genius. If I'd grown up in a Jewish home, I might wax poetic about that kind of Hannukah. I'd share happy memories of childhood dreidel spinning and 8 nights of gifts, but I'm a brand new Jew and a political scientist, so the part of Hannukah that matters to me is the connection between the distant past and our life right now. And I'm thinking about a secular temple that was ransacked and defiled by bullies who had forced their will on the rest of us. I'm thinking about January 6th. Here we are in mid-December. Right around the corner coming up is the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. Do you remember that day? Do you remember watching live on television the hordes of wild-eyed Trump supporters breaking the windows of our nation's Capitol, storming into the House of Representatives and the Senate, some of them shouting the name of the Speaker of the House, looking to do their version of rough justice? Oh, Nancy, where are you, Nancy? The chants of the crowd: hang Mike Pence. The hand-to-hand combat with police who didn't fire their weapons because they didn't want to massacre American citizens on the holy ground of our national temple. And do you remember how the insurrectionists defiled our temple? How they came to show they were going to dominate us and force us to do their will, that they were in charge now. How they paraded around with trophies of war, carrying with them personal papers, laptop computers. One even took the podium in Speaker Pelosi's office. This was brute force coming for our rule of law. men, mostly men, in military gear, wearing camo and body armor. And just to make a point, some of them even defecated in the halls of Congress. And then in the middle of all this was the QAnon shaman and so-called Christians flying flags with crosses on them, crosses and weird depictions of Trump as some supercharged young Rambo, some hyper-masculine symbol side by side with the cross of Jesus in our temple. They prayed in our temple. There are photos of it. The QAnon shaman, a misguided man from our own state of Arizona, delivered a prayer in the Senate chamber, a prayer to his God. And this was done in the name of religion, all of it. Trumpism isn't political. I have wonderful friends who are Republicans. Trumpism is not political, it is religious. The fervor is religion. The symbols are twisted out of Christianity. And on January 6th, our capital became their temple. Their temple. But the Maccabean spirit was in the steely determination of elected representatives of both parties. That was our Hannukah miracle. Both parties. There's video of Speaker Pelosi on the phone with Vice President Pence, both equally determined to finish their work, their sacred work of accepting the votes of the people. And that night, Vice President Pence refused to leave the Capitol. He stayed huddled in the underground garage. Most of the Republicans in the Senate, even Lindsey Graham, was ready to end this siege of our temple. Even the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, who is set to become the next Speaker of the House, even on that day, Kevin McCarthy was furious with the insurrectionists. And for one brief moment, we were all Americans together. All of us. Now, for us as Unitarians, our faith tradition explicitly names democracy itself as a religious principle. I find that remarkable and worth celebrating. This is our Maccabean fire. And just last month, we had a momentous, historic election, an inspirational election, an election that showed we would not be dominated by those who follow that other religion of Trump. We would not bow down to their God. We would not worship their God. We will always have opposing politics in our system. But that's not what this was. We will always have opposing parties in politics. Just as in Israel to this day, there are deep divisions between Jews who want to treat Palestinians as a people worthy of respect, and those who want to continue a policy of domination and humiliation over them. Human nature. Human nature we will always have with us. But how we respond to the continuing struggle between domination and freedom, that is totally and completely up to us. So, the insurrection was a national shame, a shanda. But it ended in victory, and the rule of law has been restored. The American temple has been cleansed. The QAnon shaman is doing time in a federal prison, and soon he might have even more company. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it. Now the choir is about to share virtually with us a story about standing up to bullies and a particularly Unitarian, non-violent style of the Maccabean spirit. It doesn't take place in a national monument like the Temple in Jerusalem or the Capitol building in Washington. This story takes place in an American town smaller than Tucson. It takes place during Hanukkah. Maybe this can become our Hanukkah story here, one that we tell every year as Unitarians, a story without any supernatural miracles, a story about the miracle of love and compassion, a story about anti-Semitism, which is on the rise in this country. If anti-Semitism and prejudice is darkness, where do we find our light? May this story we are about to hear through our virtual choir give us courage for the living of these days. May it help us to be light so people will find a way, not just in Jerusalem or Washington, but right here in our town. How we respond to the continuing struggle between domination and freedom is up to us. Blessed be.
In all through the 1980s and into the early 1990s, particularly across the great heartland of this country and up into the Great Plains and particularly across Montana, there was a huge rise of white supremacy. The Klan, various other organized white supremacists, anti-Semitic, anti-Indigenous peoples, oddly and ironically anti-immigrant as well. And people had been noticing this, particularly in Billings, a relatively small town. At the time of the thing we're talking about in 1993, it's 81,000 people. And there's barely 50 Jewish families at the time. They had been going virtually unchecked, attacking the indigenous peoples of what is now Montana. In the following video that you're going to see, there actually isn't any footage of the choir. I've put in photos and contemporary video of the incident we're talking about in 1993. A couple of very disturbing and uncomfortable images, but I think they're appropriate to the story. A young woman, Tammy Schnitzer, was a relatively young mother, and she had gone to the local newspaper and had said, "Why aren't you covering any of this? Why aren't you talking about any of this?" And the newspaper editor supposedly said, "What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about." And she left in frustration. A couple days later, she came back with a big fistful of flyers, mailers, newsletters, photos of vandalism. And she said, "This is what I'm talking about." And the newspaper started covering it. And little by little, Tammy and her group of friends became a thorn in the side of white supremacists. So much so that it led to an attack on their house, a literal terror attack. One of the things that's not mentioned in the song is that the brick that was thrown when Tammy and her husband Brian were out for the night with friends, and their two young children, 5-year-old Isaac and 2-year-old Rachel, were there with a babysitter. This was a deliberately targeted terror attack. And the community's response is amazing. The Not in Our Town Foundation still exists and continues to provide support and help all across the country. This is a song written by Fred Small, who many of you know, and many of you know because he's a great Unitarian Universalist as well. And it was written around 2001. It became a piece that went through Gala Choruses, the Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses. There was a gorgeous men's choir arrangement done by Kevin Robison. I directed a mixed chorus, so I, of course, wanted to adapt it for mixed chorus, and I got Kevin's permission to adapt it. And this is Fred Small's version of Not in Our Town. When I did this arrangement 10 years ago for Desert Voices, it was necessary and a needed piece. And I was hoping that we could put it away and never have to do it again. Unfortunately, we need to hear it again.
Five-year-old Isaac woke screaming in the gloom. I'm at my window, looking into my room. Son, there's nothing out there but shadows branches say. The little boy went back to sleep. His parents lay awake. For Isaac's bedroom window showed a rain for all to see. Was not unfriendly. He said, "Ma'am, if I were you, I'd take down that menorah, the Star of David too." His mother Tammy said, "I'm sure that's good advice, but how then could I ever look my children in the eye?"
Then at the doorway a little girl did stand, a gift for her schoolmate in her outstretched hand, a menorah drawn in crayon from magenta to a Jew.
It read to Isaac from Rebecca, "I'm sorry this happened to you. Have you seen the paper? Did you hear the news? What kind of people are we? We thought we knew. Your children brought in prejudice, in peace together dwell." If we go through this shattered glass,
not in our town. I wanted to say a very, very heartfelt thank you to the entire choir for taking the time and putting in the very hard work of learning that piece, because that was a challenging musically piece. And thank you to all of them. A huge, huge thank you to Debbie and to Monica for the beautiful solos, to Alex for his clarinet playing at the beginning, and an enormous thank you to Todd and to Lee for their help in recording that. Also, to everybody involved for the tremendous good humor that they put in. I don't know if any of you have ever worked in a recording studio. There's a whole lot of standing around and waiting, and a whole lot of, I don't understand why we're doing this for the fourth time. But everybody bore it up and did an excellent job with grace and good humor, and I am incredibly grateful. For everybody who took part, thank you.
Wow, just blown away. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Monica, for this very, very important message that's so relevant yet today to us, to the world. I have to bring it down now to the mundane. We have some announcements to make. Melanie Landa will speak, and then Chuck Tatum, and then I have a few closing words, and then we will have our chalice releasing.
I am reminding everyone that there is a potluck tomorrow here at MVUU on the patio. We will not be using the church, so we will be eating outside, and it will be chilly, so bring a coat. It's for snowbirds, and anyone who has ever been a snowbird, or maybe who is thinking of being a snowbird, or it's really not a closed event, but the idea is to people who are here seasonally, an easier way for them to get integrated into the congregation. And so it's a potluck. Bring a dish to share, and bring your own place settings as you would like going to a picnic. So your drinks, silverware, and dishes. Noon tomorrow, noon to 2.
I'm here on behalf of the board, and I make this announcement on our airborne communicable disease policy that we passed at the Thursday meeting. And this is done in the spirit of an invitation to create a safe place for all of us, and particularly our most vulnerable. Our survey that we did several weeks ago revealed that we have 20% of our congregants, members and friends, who are immunocompromised. But this is for everybody, but particularly those who are most vulnerable. Members of the board that are here today will be available to answer your questions after the service is over. Pat, Theda, Lee, and myself. Tom has to rush to another engagement, but we'll be out and be willing to answer your questions. And I have a few copies of this policy that I'm going to read to you, but something you can take away, and it will be well publicized in the next newsletter and elsewhere. So this is it. So the MVU Board of Trustees recognizes the need for safety and the desire for community, and encourages each person to make the best decision for her or his health situation. After consideration of the changing nature of airborne communicable diseases and the risks they impose to members of our congregation, and especially those who may have health risks impacted by such diseases as COVID, influenza, and RSV, the board implements the following policy effective immediately. When risk levels are low, use of the building is unrestricted, with masking optional. Food and drink anywhere in the building can be available, except, of course, in the sanctuary, which is a sanctuary. When risk levels are medium, use of the building is unrestricted, but masking is strongly encouraged when 2 or more are gathered. So that would be for services as well as committee meetings or individual meetings with, for example, Reverend Matthew. Food or drink can be served, but only on the patio. When risk levels are high, the use of the building is unrestricted, with masking required when 2 or more are gathered, no food or drink anywhere in the building. Communal or choral singing to be determined by Chris, by our music director. Sanitizing of all public surfaces following use is required using supplied sanitizing materials. And I thank Tom for purchasing those disinfectant wipes and distributing them among the tables out in the Oasis room. These policies will be in effect for all MVU community or rental activities held on MVUU property until revised or rescinded. So again, we'll be out to answer your questions and perhaps to clear up some of the confusion that might arise from a rapid reading of this new policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie and Chuck, for these important words. So we have a table in the Oasis room with a wooden bowl and a woven basket on it. Donations placed in the wooden bowl go to the operations of the church, and donations into the woven basket supports our social justice outreach community. This month, the woven basket's donations support the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. This is a nonprofit, non-sectarian organization advancing human rights with an international community of partners and advocates. The committee's work focuses on the roots of injustice and in criminalization and oppression of people based on their identity. Its strategic priorities are crisis response, climate justice, Central American migrant justice, and offers meaningful actions to advance human rights. I am especially grateful to this organization because they aided my family to come to the United States from Europe in 1951. We thank you for your generosity. We will now have our chalice releasing. We will extinguish our chalice and release its light to continue enlightening our joys and festivities during this holiday season. I would like to recite a poem by the renowned South Asian American German poet named Dr. Anthony Theodore. My heart reaches for a spiritual light to understand my own self and the universe at large. What is your religion? They ask me. I answer always, all that leads me to the light is the religion of my heart. Nothing glows brighter than the heart awakened to the light of love that lives within it.
And okay, we're still not singing as a congregation right now. On Christmas Eve, we will be singing carols and such, but we'll be doing that outside and fully masked. But since we're not singing, I invite you again to stand up. This is a setting of the great text Al-Hanisim, one of the great traditional texts of Hannukah, by my friend Bob Hanshaw. And I invite you to stand up and do your best Israeli grapevine to this.